This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Judy Woodruff, and welcome to this PBS NewsHour Vote 2020 Super Tuesday election special. It is just after 11 p.m. on the East Coast, and the polls are now closed in the 14 states voting today. 1/3 of all the Democratic convention delegates this year are up for grabs today, making it the biggest voting day of the entire primary season. It has been a very good night so far for former Vice President Joe Biden, who is riding some momentum from his big win in South Carolina's primary on Saturday. But there are a lot of votes still to be counted, including in the largest prizes of the night, California and Texas. Here's a look quickly at what we know so far. Joe Biden is the projected winner in Virginia, in North Carolina, in Alabama, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Minnesota, Arkansas, and just moments ago in the state of Massachusetts. Senator Bernie Sanders projected to win in his home state of Vermont, also in Colorado and in the state of Utah. And in the territory of American Samoa, former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg is the projected delegate winner there. We do not yet have a projected winner in Maine, in Texas, or in California. We're watching all three of those states. Our team of public media reporters are spread out across the country in many of the key states. We start with California, the biggest prize of the night, where 415 delegates are at stake. And I'm told that we can now make a projection, and that is that Bernie Sanders is projected to win the Golden State, the state of California. That is a huge win for Bernie Sanders. But of course, what matters in the state of California is our delegates. Those are apportioned by congressional districts. There are 53 congressional districts in that state, so it remains to be seen just how many of California's 415 delegates Bernie Sanders will get. But having said that, that is a big win for the senator from Vermont. Just half an hour ago, Joe Biden spoke to his supporters in Los Angeles. Let's listen.
It's still early, but things are looking awful, awful good. For those who've been knocked down, counted out, left behind, this is your campaign. Just a few days ago, the press and the pundits had declared the campaign dead. And then came South Carolina, and they had something to say about it. So I'm here to report, we are very much alive.
And in San Francisco, that's just a few hundred miles north of where we just heard Joe Biden, we find our Amna Nawaz. So, Amna, what we're hearing from California is that Bernie Sanders has asked that the polls be kept open in parts of Los Angeles because of long lines. What are you hearing about that?
That's right, Judy. We should note that request from the Sanders campaign came before that breaking news, the Associated Press calling the state of California going to Bernie Sanders. As you mentioned, it matters not that he wins the state. It matters how many delegates he ends up getting from those 415. We don't know how many yet. But that Sanders campaign request went to an L.A. County judge after reports all day long of 1 and 2 longer hour waits in lines there. We anticipated some problems in and around L.A. They had changed their voting system. They'd upgraded it to a different kind of electronic voting system. There were issues with the voting machines that they were trying to solve. They changed some polling locations, causing some confusion among voters. So to some degree, we knew there might be some issues there. We didn't know how bad. We should also note, though, that there have been reports of long lines in other major cities, San Jose and Fresno among them. We're still waiting to see if that will lead to any delays there as well. But officially, polls have closed in California. We're going to wait to see what happens in and around L.A. But this win for Bernie Bernie Sanders here in California is huge. This was the ultimate test of that Sanders ground game, of the get out the vote effort. You'll remember back in 2016, he did lose the state to Hillary Clinton. One Democratic pollster I spoke to here said Sanders is running in California like he lost it before, which is to say he's taking all those lessons learned and applying them. He's had years to do it. Tonight, it looks like it worked out for him.
All right, Amna Nawaz reporting from California. And as you say, the night is young. It's going to take a long time to count all those ballots. You were telling us so many of them will be coming in by mail. Amna Nawaz on the case in San Francisco. Thank you. And turning now to Texas, that's the state with the second highest number of delegates up for grabs, 228. It is where we find our Dan Bush. He joins us from Houston. Dan, long lines in Texas as well.
That's right, Judy. Long lines, especially in the western part of the state, which closes the latest. I've been speaking to Democrats out there who are saying they were still waiting to vote a while ago. So long lines, just about a quarter of the vote in here in Texas, Judy. We're going to need to be waiting on results for a while longer. But as of right now, it does look like Sanders is leading. But the gap between him and Biden is closing in. A Biden official told me just a little while ago they're feeling good about Texas, Judy. They think they're going to leave here with delegates. Obviously, both Sanders and Biden, also Bloomberg, are over that threshold. Elizabeth Warren is just on the bubble. The Biden campaign official said that though it's still too early to tell exactly what's going to happen down here. But I will say, if this is a draw, more or less, with a slight Sanders win, the delegates will be roughly evenly split, potentially, depending on how they end up getting apportioned. So even if Biden were to come in second place, Judy, he would still walk away with a lot of delegates here in Texas. And
just quickly, Dan, you were telling us earlier tonight, you've talked with some voters about, and they're sharing with you what their expectations are for Joe Biden going forward.
That's right, Judy. And it's so interesting. A lot of voters who see this Biden surge, supporters say moving forward as Biden continues to do well, if he does so, they want to see him do two things. Number one, they want more policy specifics. I heard that from a lot of voters who said Biden has come this far. Now we want to hear more about what it is he's going to do specifically. Number two, Judy, they said they want to see more energy from him on the stump, in debates. So voters are excited about Biden here in Texas, but they want him to do more.
Dan Bush reporting for us tonight from Houston. Meantime, former Mayor Michael Bloomberg has spent more than $500 million of his own money, much of it in advertising in these Super Tuesday states. Tonight is the first time voters have seen his name on a primary ballot. Earlier tonight, he spoke to his supporters in West Palm Beach, Florida, about his campaign's plan to continue.
My fellow candidates spent a whole year focusing on the first four states. I was out campaigning against Donald Trump in the states where the election will actually be decided, like Wisconsin and Michigan and Pittsburgh and Ohio and North Carolina and, of course, Florida. President Obama proved that a Democrat can win all of those states, but in 2016, we lost them all. Well, I'm running to win them back.
That was Mike Bloomberg just a little while ago in Florida. Now we want to go to Virginia, where the mayor competed. But as we've reported, Vice President Biden projected to pick up his first win of the night. Lisa Desjardins is there. She joins us from Alexandria. Lisa, this was a state that Bloomberg put resources, put energy. It didn't pay off.
That's right. And just a few weeks ago, Bloomberg was leading in the polls here, even touted this as a place where he thought he could show his appeal to Democratic voters. Not to be, Judy. And I want to also add some reporting tonight, talking to a few officials from the Bloomberg campaign. They are saying, and we heard from his campaign manager to some reporters earlier tonight, that they will reassess tomorrow. But the campaign manager saying they would any campaign would reassess after any vote, sort of trying to tamp down expectations that Bloomberg is directly considering withdrawing tomorrow. But I want to add, I did talk to one person close to the campaign, familiar with the Bloomberg thinking, who told me this is the deal, Judy. It's important reporting that Bloomberg will reassess based on the delegate math after tonight. What happens in Texas and California in particular, very important. The reassessment will be, can Joe Biden have a clear path to a majority of delegates? If so, I am told by this person familiar with the Bloomberg thinking that Bloomberg will strongly consider dropping out and supporting Joe Biden as a way to try and beat President Trump. If there is not a clear path after tonight for Joe Biden, then Bloomberg likely stays in for two reasons. One, they believe that Bloomberg takes votes away from Bernie Sanders, who they think is the weaker candidate. They also think that there could be a convention fight. And in that case, they believe Mike Bloomberg should stay in to see it all the way through. A lot of ifs in all those statements, but basically the Bloomberg campaign knows this has been a rough night. They are reassessing, but they are reassessing with an eye toward how to beat Donald Trump, potentially supporting Joe Biden, but only depending on Joe Biden's strength.
And as you say, very focused on beating the president. But tonight, Mike Bloomberg projected to win only American Samoa, the U.S. territory so far. Lisa Desjardins reporting for us from Northern Virginia. Meantime, next door to the south, North Carolina has the third largest pool of delegates today, 110. As we mentioned, Joe Biden, the projected winner there. Yamiche Alcindor joins us from Raleigh with the latest. Yamiche, you've been looking at these surveys that were done with voters on their way to the polls today and in recent days. What are you seeing about the characteristics of voters who supported these different candidates?
Judy, the word tonight is really Joe-mentum. That's what supporters of Joe Biden are saying to describe the momentum. They think the vice president, the former vice president, has, now that Super Tuesday has been underway, he's won 8 contests, and they feel very good about that. And they're looking at some of these voter surveys and saying this is why Joe Biden can beat President Trump. They're looking at the fact that if you were a voter who put health care or race relations or beating Donald Trump at the top of your mind, you are more likely to break for Joe Biden in this state. I also want to point out that black voters here in North Carolina broke for Joe Biden by large numbers. He carried 50% of black voters here. Bernie Sanders, who was the front runner going into Super Tuesday, only got 25%. And then Michael Bloomberg, who spent a lot of money but did not get the results that he paid for, got 12% of the vote. Now, there is that reporting from Lisa saying that he might be reassessing and looking at whether or not Joe Biden has a clear path after Super Tuesday. The Biden campaign is saying, look, this shows that we have a clear path to the nomination. There were people who were saying, of course, that Joe Biden was struggling, but then came South Carolina. And South Carolina really changed so much of this race. Amy Klobuchar dropped out, Pete Buttigieg dropped out, and that really benefited Joe Biden. Voters all over the state told us that was a lot of the reason why they were supporting Joe Biden. There were supporters of both Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar that broke for Joe Biden because of that and because of their endorsement.
So many moving parts leading up to tonight's results. Yamiche Alcindor reporting tonight from Raleigh. Thank you, Yamiche. Meantime, Massachusetts, home state of Senator Elizabeth Warren. But tonight, former Vice President Joe Biden is projected to win the primary there. Earlier tonight, Senator Warren, spoke to supporters in Detroit, and she vowed to continue.
My name is Elizabeth Warren, and I'm the woman who's going to beat Donald Trump. And the pundits have gotten it wrong over and over. So here's my advice. I've got some advice that I want to start with tonight. So here's my advice. Cast a vote that will make you proud. Cast a vote from your heart. And vote for the person you think will make the best president of the United States of America.
That's Elizabeth Warren tonight in Detroit. And meantime, joining us from Boston is WGBH's Adam Riley. So, Adam, clearly in her home state, the senator was not able to pull off a win.
Yeah, and I would say if you asked anyone 1 week ago, is Elizabeth Warren in danger of finishing third in Massachusetts, they would have said, oh, no, not third. You know, she may not beat Bernie Sanders, but she's going to come in either first or second. This is a huge surprise, and I think a big blow to the Warren campaign. That clip that you played, by the way, and that's an argument that I've heard Warren surrogates make in the run-up to today's primary. Their theory is basically that a whole bunch of people want to vote for Elizabeth Warren, but are getting too caught up in playing private pundit and trying to figure out who's best positioned to beat the president. And that if they would just let that go, let go of that baggage, vote the way they really want to, that she would start to thrive. And I think, among other things, now the Warren campaign probably has to start asking itself, is that in fact the case? Or are there other factors that we need to consider? For example, that maybe there aren't as many people who would like to vote Warren as we initially estimated there are.
And Adam, as you said yourself a moment ago, it was Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren who were thought to be the strongest candidates in Massachusetts. So where does this win by Joe Biden come from? What can you see from voters you've spoken with and these voter surveys?
The voters who I talked to today when I was at Warren's polling place in Cambridge, the Biden voters I talked to there were not overly enthusiastic about their choice. They did seem to consider him to be, the best option for pragmatic purposes, the guy with the best chance of beating Trump and not being dismissed as too far to the left, which was a concern that some of them had about Warren and Sanders. But I think it's really a product of those exits from the race. If you imagine this same race with Buttigieg and Klobuchar still in it, splitting the moderate vote, which is sizable in Massachusetts. We have a lot of moderate Democrats, also a ton of independents. If they were all divvying it up, Warren might have gotten the strong showing that she was anticipating. I want to mention an important point here. Their theory of how she could find a path to victory prior to tonight, it was they thought they were going to do extremely well on Super Tuesday. Back at the beginning of February, around the New Hampshire primary, they thought they were going to be in a position to win half the states or more than half the states this evening. And instead, it's looking like she's not going to get delegates in some big states. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think Texas is one of them. We'll see how she performs in California. So it's a huge decline or a deviation from what used to be very high expectations. Remember, there was a point last year in the autumn where she looked like she could be the front runner nationally.
Adam Riley reporting from Boston with WGBH. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Judy.
For the latest now on Joe Biden's projected win in Minnesota, Mary LaHammer of Twin Cities PBS joins us from Minneapolis. So speaking, Mary, of candidates who dropped out, Amy Klobuchar, daughter, if you will, of Minnesota, dropped out on Sunday. What are people saying there? It's a state that Joe Biden is now projected to win. What happened in Minnesota?
This is really a huge upset, Judy. If you look at the last poll we had in Minnesota just a couple of weeks ago, Biden was running a distant fourth, only getting 8% of the vote. Tonight, he delivers a convincing 38%. That is a growth of 30 percentage points in just weeks. And tonight, he said he credits Senator Amy Klobuchar for that win, that her votes went to him. Now, the question we have to ask is what's next for Amy Klobuchar? She's going to campaign with Vice President Biden, and that word vice president is being talked about a lot here, that maybe she's in consideration for that. She would bring some geographic and gender balance. She has always said, I have won every time, everywhere, and she just perhaps delivered Minnesota for Biden. So we wonder if he's going to look at her. Minnesota's known as the land of 10,000 lakes, but also almost 10,000 vice presidents. We've had Vice President Walter Mondale, Hubert Humphrey. Republican Tim Pawlenty was almost John McCain's vice president. So again, we've got another one in the mix. And her ability to deliver this state, it is a battleground state, even though we have all Democrats in statewide office. President Donald Trump came very close here, 1.5 percentage points, and he wants to win Minnesota. We have Vice President Pence coming here later this week. And Trump always says if he had just made one more visit, one more stop to Minnesota, he thought he could win it, and he wants to win it. So this will be a battleground.
And very quickly, 15 seconds, what happened to Bernie Sanders?
Sanders, I would say a disappointing finish. He looked like he was surging. That was some of the speculation that Klobuchar was getting out because Sanders was looking so strong. So I would have to say upset victory for Biden tonight, kind of a surprise disappointment for Sanders.
Mary LaHammer, Twin Cities Public Television, thank you very much for joining us. And now for analysis of tonight's results, we are joined by none other than syndicated columnist Mark Shields and New York Times columnist David Brooks. And it's not even Friday, but thank you for being here.
Good to be here.
On Super Tuesday. So Mark, What happened? I mean, Joe Biden, people were all but declaring him gone.
Who said that? Who said that?
I could quote a few people.
You could. You sure could.
Not so many days ago, and he's cleaning up tonight.
It's a lesson in humility. I'd say this, Judy. Every rule that I've known about politics has been suspended, if not repealed. I mean, you had to have a consistent message. You had to have an inspiring speaker. You had to have organization. You had to have money. You had to have a campaign structure. Joe Biden, on a wing and a prayer with Joe Biden, went to South Carolina. Nobody in the modern era has been elected president of the United States who didn't finish worse than second in Iowa and New Hampshire. He finished fourth and fifth. He was written off. And in South Carolina, the endorsement of just 5 days ago, 120 hours ago, of Jim Clyburn, really, 61% of the South Carolina voters said it was an influential factor. 25% said it was a decisive factor in their decision. He delivered, and Joe Biden won a crushing victory. And I've got to say, I have never seen it move so quickly without paid media, without any kind of structure, over a weekend, on a Sunday to a Tuesday, and the word got out. And what it came down to, in my judgment, Donald Trump. Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, the perception grew that Bernie Sanders could not beat Donald Trump or would lose to him. And losing to Donald Trump is anathema, is the organizing principle of Democrats in 2020.
And we should say, David, California, Bernie Sanders is projected to win California. We don't know what the delegate breakdown is going to look like. We still don't know about Texas. But at this point, a number of states that people thought Joe Biden didn't have a chance, or he's won.
Yeah, Massachusetts and Minnesota, he was like in fourth place a week ago. Yep. Yeah, to me, tonight is not about candidates. It's not even about demographic. It's about group psychology. You had a coalition of people who share a common identity. They're Democrats. And they're from all different shades and hues and classes. And they had a bunch of candidates. They weren't crazy about any of them. They weren't uncrazy about any of them. And they didn't have to make a decision, so they were just anxious. And then Super Tuesday, coming so early, forced a decision upon them. And it's like a flock of geese. They all decided, okay, this is what we've decided. And they decided as one almost. And they said it's going to be Biden. And now, having made that decision, I'm trying to think through the next stage of the psychology. Can they undecide? And I don't think they can undecide because there aren't any candidates left aside from essentially Biden and Sanders by now. So it's really about a group of people who made a decision all at once, as if just by group choice.
The one place I would disagree on that, I'm sorry, is that it wasn't a homogenous group. I mean, there were it was Massachusetts Democrats and Oklahoma Democrats.
Yeah, I meant to say that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very disparate by class, by education, by race. I mean, it is truly remarkable.
And I guess my question is, what is it about Joe Biden that the voters in these states are seeing that the voters in Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada, fewer of them saw?
He's not Donald Trump. He's not Donald Trump. And he's not Bernie Sanders. I mean, they just saw it with Bernie Sanders. There's a ceiling on Bernie Sanders. And I just think the more you see of Bernie Sanders, the intensity of support for him is deep and it's passionate, but it doesn't grow.
Yeah, you look at where he was 4 years ago in states like Minnesota and Oklahoma and Virginia. He's doing much, much worse. There were only two candidates 4 years ago, but still he's doing much, much worse. And Biden's strength is with African Americans and with suburbans, voters, and especially suburban women and working class. And if you're thinking about electability, the groups that the Democrats have to get are suburban women and working class.
I agree, but I'd add this. There were 6 candidates who ran for president in 2020 who were pulled out of the race and have endorsed another candidate. One, Julian Castro, endorsed Elizabeth Warren. The other 5, Seth Moulton, Tim Ryan, Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, and Beto O'Rourke, all endorsed Joe Biden. That says something. I mean, it's a personal, politics is a personal business. People like Joe Biden. They trust Joe Biden. They know Joe Biden.
Mike Bloomberg, what's going on?
I don't think he has a reason to campaign anymore. He could hang around in the hopes that something will happen. But he really betted on tonight. And it's just not, I just don't think paid media works in a presidential race, and it's not a good year to be a billionaire.
$550 million is a lot of money.
Yeah, his plan was that Biden crater. I mean, Biden continued the fourth.
And he said
fifth.
that.
And he needed that, and Biden's resurgence robbed him of it. And he did not live up to his paid media. His paid media was, I mean, paid media said you're wonderful. He should have been the candidate once the coronavirus hit. I mean, if you're talking about somebody in that field to handle the coronavirus, Mike Bloomberg, but I'm sorry. I mean, the dogs didn't like the dog food. I mean, he was not likable. He was not approachable, and he just not connected at a human level.
Because of you're mentioning coronavirus, because of managing New York
Managing
after
New York,
9/11,
dealing
he
with
was
crises
given credit.
and 9/11 and all the rest.
Just one other couple things to mention. One is the down ballot races. There's one in Alabama. Pete Sessions, the former, of course, Republican senator who was named Attorney General by, what did I say, Pete Sessions, I'm sorry, Jeff Sessions, who was the senator from the state of Alabama. President Trump named him to be Attorney General. They had a huge falling out over Sessions not recusing himself over the entire Russia investigation. Long story short, Jeff Sessions was replaced. He's gone back to Alabama running again. Tonight he is in a runoff with another Republican.
With Tommy Tuberville, the former Auburn coach. Yeah.
So he may be coming back to Washington.
But it's been a. You wonder, he was the better known of the candidates, and the fact that he didn't do better in the first run, I think probably augurs. It's a problem for Jeff Sessions. Maybe it came down to a question of who was more loyal to Trump, and he, as they say in Alabama, he excused himself, rather than recusing himself. But I think it's a problem for him.
Elizabeth Warren, 20 seconds.
Yeah. Not a very good, humiliating night. I thought, ran a good campaign, a very good campaign.
I agree.
But did only well with highly educated progressives, and just couldn't get outside that bubble. So.
Just amazing. I mean, she's the mystery of me.
We will leave it on that note. Mark Shields,
Thank you.
David Brooks, thank you both.
Thank you.
And that concludes our Super Tuesday election special. Please join us online for the further results as they come in. That is on our website at pbs.org/newshour. I'm Judy Woodruff. Make sure to join us tomorrow evening for analysis of all the Super Tuesday results. For all of us at the PBS NewsHour, thank you and good night.
This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
You're watching PBS.